Week 1, Raw backstage interview with Jake Carter. The show kicks off with Jim Ross conducting an intense backstage interview with Jake Carter. Jake's expression is riddled with frustration, and his tone is sharp as he answers Ross's questions. "Let me tell you something, Jim," Jake begins, his eyes narrowing as he leans toward the veteran broadcaster. "Anthony Chandler is a coward, plain and simple. The man couldn't beat me clean on his best day. In fact, let's not sugarcoat it. Anthony Chandler has never beaten Jake Carter." Ross raises an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "What exactly do you mean by that, Jake? You're saying you weren't at 100%? Jake smirks bitterly, shaking his head. 100%? Jim? Try 50. Hell, if I'm being real, I don't even think I was at 25%. You know where I was the week before that match? I had the world at my fingertips. I was up in Canada, shaking hands with their so-called elite, eating the finest food, throwing back drinks like I was untouchable. And yeah, I got careless. But here's the kicker. I still almost put Chandler away. That wasn't Jake Carter at his best, not even close. And if he's too much of a chicken to face me when I am, well, that tells you all you need to know about what kind of man Anthony Chandler really is." Ross probes further. "You mentioned during King of the Ring that Chandler has been sending people after you. Do you think that's going to continue?" Jake sneers, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think I care who he sends after me? Butch Gilzian? Bring him on. Gilbert Sullivan, Duck Dynasty. I don't give a damn at this point. Chandler's got this idea in his head that he's still this larger-than-life hero, but the truth is, he's writing checks his ass can't cash anymore. He has a wife, kids, people who look up to him. I used to look up to him, Jim. But now, he's just a hollow version of the man he used to be. No dignity left, no backbone." Ross shifts the conversation. "Where do you go from here, Jake? What's the next step for you?" With that, Jake's demeanor sharpens, his focus unrelenting. "The next step is Survivor Series," he declares. "Zara Piper came to me personally and asked me to lead Team Raw. And you know what, Jim? I said yes, because I'm going to prove, once and for all, why I'm the best thing this brand has going for it. But don't think I'm done with Anthony Chandler. Oh no, not even close. I want him at Armageddon in the Scotiabank Arena. That's right, my turf. So, Anthony, if you've got the balls, you'll accept. But judging by the coward I've been dealing with, I won't hold my breath." Match: Dolph Ziggler versus Ilja Dragunov. Later in the night, Dolph Ziggler squares off against Ilja Dragunov in a high-stakes qualifier for Team Raw. From the moment the bell rings, Ziggler is cocky as ever, blatantly mocking both his opponent and the fans. He flips off the crowd between moves, taking his time to rub his dominance in their faces. Despite Dragunov's resilience and stiff strikes, Ziggler ultimately hits a superkick out of nowhere, putting the match to bed. Post-match, Ziggler grabs a microphone amidst a sea of deafening boos. He waits for the noise to die down, but as it only grows louder, his patience wears thin. With venom in his voice, Ziggler spits, "You know what? Screw all of you. Go fuck yourselves." He drops the mic with authority and storms off to a chorus of jeers. Match: Cody Rhodes versus Santana. Later on, Cody Rhodes steps into the ring with Santana in another Survivor Series qualifier. The match is fast-paced but one-sided. Cody wastes no time, efficiently dismantling Santana with a crossroads for the 3 count. After his arm is raised, Cody looks to the camera, mouthing, "Time to take care of business." Backstage segment: Ziggler and Jake encounter. As the show progresses, Dolph Ziggler storms into Jake Carter's locker room, not bothering to knock. "Team leader, huh?" Ziggler scoffs, arms crossed. Ziggler steps further into the room, his trademark smirk plastered across his face, but there's nothing playful about his tone. "Team leader," he repeats with a sneer. What a joke. While you were getting your ass handed to you in the UFC, I was here busting my ass and keeping Raw relevant. Now, all of a sudden, you're back, and everyone's supposed to fall in line behind you? Jake, seated on a bench, doesn't even bother to stand. He looks up at Ziggler with an amused expression, shaking his head. "You done? Or you need to monologue some more? Make yourself feel important?" Ziggler steps closer, his voice rising. "This isn't a comedy show, Carter. I'm the real heart and soul of Raw. You're just a washed-up fighter who came crawling back because you couldn't cut it anywhere else." Jake finally stands, staring Ziggler down with an intensity that quiets the room. You've got a lot of nerve walking in here and running your mouth. But I get it. You're projecting, Dolph? You're pissed because no matter how hard you work, no matter how many flips, super kicks, and middle fingers you throw out, nobody ever takes you seriously. And now you're staring at someone who doesn't have to brag about being the man. Because I am the man. You don't like it? Do something about it. The tension skyrockets, and Ziggler looks like he's about to explode. He takes one step closer, and Jake clenches his fists, ready for a fight. Before it can escalate, the door swings open and Cody Rhodes strides in. Cody's face is unreadable as he surveys the scene. "What the hell is this?" he asks, his voice calm but commanding. "We're supposed to represent Raw at Survivor Series, and here you two jackasses are, measuring your egos like a couple of teenagers." Ziggler glares at Cody. "Stay out of this, Rhodes. This doesn't concern you." Cody steps in between them, shoving Ziggler back a step. "Oh, it concerns me. All right, if we're going to war for Raw, we're doing it as a team. I don't care how much you two hate each other. You both hate losing even more. So you're going to put your bullshit aside, or I'm going to break both of you in half." Jake smirks, clearly entertained by Cody's no-nonsense demeanor. "Relax, Cody. I've got my eyes on the prize. But don't be surprised if Ziggler trips over his own ego and costs us the match." Ziggler steps forward again, jabbing a finger in Cody's chest. "Do that again, Rhodes, and it's open season." Cody's eyes narrow, and for a second it looks like he's about to strike. But he holds back, pointing at both Jake and Ziggler. "Listen to me, and listen good. Survivor Series is about one thing: Raw supremacy. After that?" Cody takes a step back, his gaze locking firmly on Ziggler. "It's open season for real." The room falls silent as Cody walks out, leaving Jake and Ziggler glaring at each other. After a moment, Jake chuckles and shakes his head. "Guess he told you," Jake quips, sitting back down. Ziggler doesn't respond, storming out in frustration. Week 1, Smackdown. The Smackdown portion of the week begins with Blitz decimating his opponent in what can barely be called a match. A few brutal strikes and a devastating finisher seal the victory, leaving his opponent unconscious in the center of the ring. As Blitz exits up the ramp, the fans cheer him on, but his focus is elsewhere. Backstage, Blitz is wiping the sweat from his forehead when Butch Gilzean approaches, his presence as menacing as ever. Butch doesn't waste time. "Blitz," he growls, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Anthony Chandler wants you on Team Smackdown." Blitz raises an eyebrow, leaning against the wall. "Tony wants me on his team?" he asks, his tone riddled with sarcasm. "Let me guess. He's hoping I'll carry his washed-up ass to victory." Butch's jaw tightens, but he forces a smile. "Watch your mouth, pal. Chandler doesn't need anyone to carry him. He's offering you an opportunity to make something of yourself. But hey, if you'd rather sit this one out and watch, be my guest." Blitz grins, his cocky demeanor fully intact. "Relax, Butch. I'll do it. But let Anthony know, once this is over, I'm giving him a kick in the bollocks for making me play nice." Butch chuckles darkly. "You'll do what you're told. See you at Survivor Series." Later in the night, Kevin Owens is shown backstage watching a monitor playing highlights from Raw. On screen, Jake Carter's cocky promo about Anthony Chandler being a coward and the Canadian GOAT plays on repeat. Owens sneers, shaking his head. "Unbelievable," he mutters under his breath. Before he can say more, Butch Gilzean appears behind him, his usual intimidating grin in place. "Owens," Butch says, cutting straight to the chase. "Anthony Chandler wants you on Team Smackdown." Owens spins around, his expression a mix of skepticism and disgust. "Chandler wants me? After everything he's pulled? What's the catch?" Butch shrugs casually. "No catch. The boss knows you've got talent. You're one of the best this brand has to offer, and he wants you on his side for Survivor Series. Plus," Butch smirks, jerking his thumb toward the monitor, "that guy still calls himself the Canadian GOAT. Wouldn't you love to shut his mouth once and for all?" Owens looks back at the screen, where Jake's face is frozen mid-sneer. A slow, wicked smile spreads across KO's face. "You know what?" he says, turning back to Butch. "Screw Jake Carter. I'm in." Later in the show, Kenny Omega is backstage, fresh off a victory. He enters his locker room only to find Butch Gilzean waiting for him, lounging in a chair and puffing on a cigar. Kenny raises an eyebrow. "Well, this is ominous. Let me guess. You've come to make me an offer I can't refuse? Butch chuckles as he rises, flicking the ash from his cigar. You catch on fast. Chandler wants you on Team Smackdown. You in? Kenny leans against a wall, crossing his arms. Interesting. Let's see. You've got Blitz, Kevin Owens, and now you're coming to me. If I didn't know better, I'd say Chandler's building his dream team of people Jake Carter has a personal grudge against. Butch smirks, impressed. Smart guy. But this isn't about Jake Carter. This is about SmackDown proving it's the superior brand. Kenny shrugs. Yeah, sure. I'll play along. But tell Chandler this. If he screws this up, I'm not going to hesitate to take him down myself. Butch nods, grinning. Noted. Welcome to the team, Omega. As Butch leaves, Kenny shakes his head, muttering to himself. Man, this is going to be a circus. Week 2, Raw. We open to Raw with Jake Carter standing in the center of the ring, microphone in hand, his fiery glare piercing through the crowd. The fans are buzzing, knowing Jake never holds back when it comes to calling people out. Anthony Chandler! Jake bellows, pacing the ring like a lion ready to pounce. I know you're back there, so why don't you stop hiding behind your lapdogs, march your ass down here, and face me like a man? I've got some things to say, and I want to say them to your face. The arena erupts in cheers, but instead of Chandler's theme, the ominous tones of Butch Gilzean's entrance music hit. The towering brute strides onto the stage, looking every bit the menacing figure he is. The crowd boos loudly, but Butch waves them off, raising his hand to silence them as he brings the mic to his lips. Jake, Butch begins, his voice dripping with mockery. Whatever you've got to say, you can say it to me. Don't worry about Chandler. I'm more than capable of delivering the message. He smirks, clearly relishing the moment. Jake's jaw tightens, gripping the mic with intensity. All right, Butch, you want me to speak my mind? Fine, I'll give it to you. He pauses, a wicked grin spreading across his face. I'm wondering why Anthony Chandler, a man who's supposed to be a legend, supposed to be a leader, is too much of a coward to come out here himself. Instead, he's busy assembling what I can only call my personal Legion of Doom for this Survivor Series match. Does the great Anthony Chandler not have the balls to face me one-on-one? Or has he lost his confidence altogether? Butch tilts his head, amused by Jake's anger. Let's call it like it is, Jake continues, his voice rising with fury. Anthony Chandler is desperate. It's written all over his face. He's out here trying to play mind games, trying to recruit people he thinks can rattle me. But here's the problem. It won't work. How many times do I have to beat Kevin Owens into the ground before it sinks in that I own him? Kenny Omega? Been there, done that? Blitz? Don't make me laugh. Anthony's big plan is to pick a team made up of people I've already destroyed. The only thing he's done is make it easier for me to wipe them off the face of the planet one more time. Jake leans against the ropes, his grin replaced by disdain. Honestly, I'm disappointed. I was told nobody in this business plays mind games like Anthony Chandler. I was told he was a master manipulator, a chess player in a world full of checkers players. But this is a sad, knockoff version of the Sinister Six. It's pathetic. Anthony Chandler is pathetic. What a... Jake pauses for dramatic effect, letting the insults simmer. Then, venomously, he concludes, what a bitch! The crowd erupts into deafening cheers. Butch can't help but laugh, slowly clapping as he steps closer to the ring. Mr. Carter, he says mockingly, I'm sorry you feel that way. But let me set the record straight. Anthony Chandler doesn't lose sleep over you. You think he's sitting in a dark room somewhere, scheming on how to get into your head? Newsflash, Jakey, he's already living rent-free in there. Jake chuckles, shaking his head. Okay, Butch, cool story. But since your boss is so keen on recruiting people who have a history with me, I figured I'd return the favor. Jake turns, pointing to the stage. The arena lights dim, and a thunderous, familiar theme blasts through the speakers. The crowd goes wild. CM Punk. The Chicago native steps out onto the stage, arms crossed, his trademark smirk in place. The audience explodes with chants of, CM Punk! CM Punk! But there's more. Another iconic theme hits, and the arena loses its mind as Bryan Danielson walks out to join Punk. The two men, both former allies and adversaries of Anthony Chandler, stand side by side, arms folded, with expressions as stoic as their legendary status. Butch, standing at ringside, grins widely, shaking his head. Have it your way, Jake. he says, his voice calm as he steps off the apron, leaving the arena buzzing with excitement. Later in the night, the atmosphere is electric as Dolph Ziggler steps into the ring to take on Kenny Omega in a match billed as a Survivor Series preview. It's an absolute clinic, with both men showcasing their wrestling brilliance. Kenny's hard-hitting strikes and suplexes clash beautifully with Dolph's speed and technical precision, and the crowd is on the edge of their seats. At ringside, Cody Rhodes watches with intensity, flanked by CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. Ziggler, always one to play mind games, can't resist taunting the crowd. Midway through the match, after hitting a slick DDT on Omega, Ziggler rolls out of the ring and approaches Cody with a smirk. "This what you're here for, Cody? Watching me outshine the whole damn show?" Cody glares at him, but says nothing. Ziggler, emboldened, strikes Cody's signature pose, drawing massive heat from the crowd and making Rhodes' blood boil. Back in the ring, Omega takes control with a Snapdragon suplex that sends Ziggler flying. But Ziggler rolls out of the ring again, getting right in Cody's face. This time, Ziggler whispers something inaudible to the cameras, but it's enough to instantly darken Cody's expression. Cody stands, fists clenched, his voice a low growl. "Say that again," he demands. Ziggler smirks and shrugs, clearly enjoying the tension. And that's it. Cody snaps. He grabs Ziggler by the collar and yanks him over the barricade. The referee immediately calls for the bell as chaos erupts. Security rushes in, but Cody is seething, shouting expletives while trying to attack Ziggler, who simply grins and mouths, "That's what I thought." Later in the night, Jake Carter finds himself in his locker room alongside CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. The air is thick with tension, but there's an undeniable energy building in the room. Jake, standing with his arms crossed, finally speaks. "First of all," he begins, his voice steady, "thank you. I know we've got history, complicated history, but I appreciate you answering the call. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't expect you to forget the past, and I'm not asking you to like me. But for one night, we need to be on the same page. Team Raw has to win." Punk leans back on a bench, smirking. "Let's get one thing straight, Jake. I'm not here for you, or for Raw, or any of that team spirit crap. I'm here for me. I'm doing this because I'm still the best in the world, and I plan on proving it. Team unity? Don't hold your breath." Danielson nods in agreement. "Same here," he says. "I'll fight for Raw at Survivor Series, but let's be clear. I've got my own reasons for being here. Anthony Chandler and I have unfinished business." He doesn't elaborate, but his tone is loaded with intensity. Jake takes a deep breath and studies them both. "Fair enough. I don't care why you're here, as long as we're all about the same thing when the bell rings, putting Smackdown in the ground. Let's handle our business at Survivor Series. After that, do whatever the hell you want." The three men exchange tense glances. There's no love lost, but for now, they're united by a common goal. Survivor Series will be about survival, domination, and making a statement. Smackdown opens with a tense backstage segment featuring Blitz and Kevin Owens. The camera pans to show Blitz pacing furiously back and forth, his boots echoing against the concrete as he mutters under his breath. Meanwhile, Kevin Owens leans casually against a wall, arms crossed, exuding an air of smug indifference. "You've got some nerve, Owens," Blitz growls, stopping abruptly to glare at Owens. The intensity in his voice matches the anger burning in his eyes. "Think I've forgotten WrestleMania? You think I've forgotten how you stabbed me in the back? How you cost me that match and trashed everything we built?" Owens doesn't even flinch. Instead, he shrugs lazily, his expression unreadable. "It was business, Blitz. Get over it. I did what I had to do." "Business?" Blitz snarls, his fists clenching at his sides. "You call stabbing your partner in the back business? You're not just a coward, Owens. You're a snake, and you've been one since day one." Standing up straight and meeting Blitz's glare head-on. "You need to calm the hell down, big guy," Owens says, his voice even but with a sharp edge of annoyance. "Yeah, we've got history, but right now we're on the same team. Whether you like it or not, we've got to make this work." Blitz steps closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Owens. "You think I want to work with you? I'd rather team with a rabid badger than with a backstabbing piece of trash like you. The tension rises as the two men are nose to nose, their tempers on the verge of boiling over into violence. Before fists can fly, Butch Gilzean strides into the scene, his heavy boots echoing through the backstage area. Butch steps between them, placing a firm hand on Blitz's chest to hold him back. "That's enough," Butch barks, his deep voice cutting through the tension like a knife. He looks back and forth between Blitz and Owens, his expression full of authority. "You two want to kill each other? Fine, do it on your own time. But right now, you're representing Smackdown. And if you can't get your heads out of your asses and work as a team, I'll personally make sure neither of you steps into that Survivor Series ring. Got it?" Blitz glares at Owens for a moment longer before stepping back, his jaw clenched in frustration. Owens smirks, but says nothing, clearly enjoying being the calmer of the two. Butch gives them one last warning glance before walking off, leaving Blitz and Owens standing in tense silence, their animosity simmering just under the surface. Later in the show, the camera cuts to Kenny Omega sitting in his locker room, a towel draped over his shoulders as he scrolls through his phone. The door creaks open and Butch Gilzean saunters in, his trademark smirk plastered across his face. Kenny glances up, visibly unimpressed. "You again? What is it this time, Butch? Here to micromanage me like everyone else?" Butch chuckles, leaning casually against a set of lockers. "Relax, Kenny. I'm just here to talk strategy. You know, Survivor Series, Team Smackdown, all that jazz." "Strategy, huh?" Kenny leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Funny, I don't see Anthony Chandler anywhere. You're starting to make me wonder if he even knows how to strategize, or if he's just making you do all his dirty work." Butch raises an eyebrow, but doesn't lose his smile. Anthony Chandler is exactly where he needs to be, doing exactly what he needs to do. "Trust me, Kenny, the boss has a plan. A damn good one. All you need to do is trust the process." Omega narrows his eyes, skeptical. "Trust the process? That sounds like an excuse for people who don't know what the hell they're doing. Chandler's supposed to be the leader of this team, but how can we trust him when he can't even bother to show up and rally the troops? Maybe it's not the process that's broken. Maybe it's the guy running it." Butch's smirk widens, his tone calm but laced with subtle menace. "Careful, Omega. Anthony Chandler doesn't need to prove himself to anyone, least of all you. Just worry about doing your part at Survivor Series. Leave the big picture to the professionals." As Butch walks out, Kenny shakes his head, muttering to himself. "Trust the process. Yeah, we'll see about that." The main event of the night pits CM Punk and Bryan Danielson against Blitz and Kevin Owens. The history between the four men adds layers of complexity to the match, as all were once part of Anthony Chandler's legendary Revolution stable. The crowd's anticipation is palpable as the bell rings, and the match quickly delivers on its promise. Punk and Danielson show fleeting glimpses of their old chemistry, exchanging quick tags and working in unison to keep Blitz on the defensive. On the other side, Blitz and Owens manage moments of cohesion, but their underlying tension threatens to explode at any moment. Owens tags himself in at one point, slapping Blitz on the shoulder with unnecessary force, and Blitz responds by shooting him a death glare. The crowd is electric as the match builds to a fever pitch. Punk and Danielson double-team Owens, hitting blistering strikes and quick suplexes to the delight of the fans. Blitz eventually storms in, clearing house with a brutal flurry of power moves, tossing Punk from the ring and slamming Danielson onto the mat with authority. For a fleeting moment, Team Smackdown appears to have the upper hand. But just as the match seems to reach its climax, chaos erupts. Members of both Team Raw and Team Smackdown storm the ring, engaging in an all-out brawl. The referee throws up his hands, completely unable to maintain order as fists and bodies fly everywhere. Punk and Danielson hit stereo finishers, Punk landing a GTS on Owens and Danielson nailing Blitz with a running knee, but it's all for naught as the chaos overtakes the match. The brawl spills to the outside, with security rushing to separate the warring factions. Through the chaos, one name is conspicuously absent: Anthony Chandler. The SmackDown leader is nowhere to be seen. Just when it seems the chaos is subsiding, the lights dim suddenly, and the arena is bathed in green and gold. An unmistakable theme blasts through the speakers, and the crowd absolutely erupts as Conor McGregor struts onto the stage. Dressed in a sharp suit and wearing his signature swagger, McGregor holds a microphone, his devilish smirk plastered across his face. "Well, well, well," McGregor begins, his thick Irish accent echoing through the arena. "Looks like the circus is in full swing, and I wouldn't miss this for the world." The crowd is deafening as McGregor laughs, soaking in the reaction. He paces the stage, his energy electric. "Jake Carter," he says, his voice turning serious, "you've been running your mouth, calling out Anthony Chandler, calling yourself the best. But let's not forget, you and we've got unfinished business. You remember me, don't you, lad? You remember what I did to you before?" Before Jake Carter can respond, his music hits and the Raw leader marches out onto the stage, ready to confront the brash Irishman. McGregor doesn't flinch, grinning as Jake approaches. But before Jake can say a word, McGregor steps forward with lightning speed and lands a thunderous left hook that connects flush with Jake's jaw. The impact is brutal, and Jake crumples to the floor, unconscious. McGregor stands over Jake's fallen body, raising his arms in triumph as the crowd erupts in shock and awe. Grabbing the microphone again, McGregor leans down over Jake. "See you at Survivor Series, champ," he says with a smirk, before tossing the mic aside. Smackdown goes off the air with McGregor standing tall, leaving no doubt that the stakes and the personal rivalries have just escalated to a whole new level. Week 3. Raw kicks off with Zara Piper standing in the center of the ring, microphone in hand, and a fiery determination in her eyes. Dressed sharply in a blazer bearing the Raw logo, she wastes no time addressing the events of SmackDown. The crowd buzzes with anticipation as she raises the microphone to her lips. "Last Friday on SmackDown," Zara begins, her voice steady but cold with contempt, "we witnessed what can only be described as cowardice of the highest order. Conor McGregor, SmackDown's so-called final piece for Survivor Series, decided to blindside Jake Carter with a cheap shot." She pauses, letting the boos from the crowd swell. "Let me make one thing perfectly clear. Jake Carter is still the captain of Team Raw. Despite the attack, despite the injuries, despite all of SmackDown's pathetic attempts to derail him, Jake will be at Survivor Series, and mark my words, he will lead Team Raw to victory." The crowd cheers, rallying behind Zara's confidence. She continues, her tone sharpening. But then there's Anthony Chandler. Zara's mention of Chandler's name draws a mix of boos and intrigue. Your leader, your so-called legend. And yet, where is he? Chandler hides behind Butch Gilzean, hides behind Conor McGregor, and continues to show the world that he lacks the courage to face Jake Carter himself. Anthony Chandler is a shadow of what he once was. And come Survivor Series, that shadow will disappear entirely. Before Zara can say another word, the unmistakable sound of Conor McGregor's music hits. The crowd erupts with a thunderous mix of cheers and boos as the brash Irishman saunters onto the stage with all the swagger in the world. Dressed in an expensive suit and radiating confidence, McGregor makes his way to the ring. He steps inside, grabbing a mic of his own, and immediately gets in Zara's face. "Well, well, well, look who we've got here," McGregor begins, his thick Irish accent dripping with arrogance. "It's Seth Rollins' wife, out here playing boss lady, while her boy Jake Carter's laid up in hospital with his wee little bruises. What's the matter, Zara? Afraid your captain isn't going to make it to Survivor Series?" The crowd erupts again, with dueling chants of "Conor McGregor" and "You suck!" Zara doesn't back down. Jake Carter will be there, and when he is, he'll wipe that smug grin off your face, you overhyped loudmouth. The last time you and Jake stood face to face, Jake broke your damn face. Has your memory gotten as weak as your aura? McGregor's smirk fades for a moment, but he quickly regains his composure. "Ah, yes. That's the story you lot like to tell yourselves, isn't it? But let me tell you what's really going on here, Zara. Anthony Chandler offered me the big bucks to do a job, and that job is knocking Jake Carter's overrated ass out cold. And judging by what I did on SmackDown, I'd say I'm already halfway there." He leans in closer to Zara, his grin widening. "And if you weren't out here playing dress-up, I'd show you exactly what I'd do to your golden boy." Zara glares at McGregor, her voice ice cold. "You talk a big game for someone who hasn't done a damn thing since he walked through these doors. You're not even an A-tier player anymore, Connor. You're a C-level distraction. You're Chandler's errand boy, nothing more. The tension in the ring is palpable, but Zara doesn't wait for McGregor to respond. She drops the mic and exits the ring, leaving McGregor standing there, fuming but unable to wipe the grin from his face. Later in the show, the cameras cut to the locker room shared by CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. Both men are sitting on opposite sides of the room, the tension between them as thick as the history they share with Anthony Chandler and Jake Carter. Punk, leaning back casually against the lockers, is the first to speak. So McGregor sucker punched Jake. Big deal. Happens all the time in this business. If Jake didn't see it coming, that's on him. Danielson, sitting on a bench and lacing his boots, looks up with a frown. This isn't just about McGregor, Punk. It's about Chandler. Something doesn't feel right. He's been quiet. Too quiet. There's no way a guy like him sits back and lets everyone else do the dirty work unless he's planning something big. And we'd be stupid not to prepare for it. Punk scoffs, waving a dismissive hand. You're overthinking it, Bryan. Chandler's just doing what he always does, hiding behind his lackeys and hoping someone else takes the fall for him. Let him play his little games. We focus on the match, win at Survivor Series, and let the chips fall where they may. Danielson shakes his head, unconvinced. You're not listening, Punk. This feels different. And if Chandler's got something up his sleeve, we need to figure out what it is before it's too late. Punk leans forward, smirking. Worry about the match, Bryan. I'll handle Chandler if he decides to show his face. Until then, let's not lose sleep over a guy who peaked 10 years ago. Danielson doesn't look reassured, but he lets the conversation drop, his focus shifting back to his upcoming match. Later in the night, Cody Rhodes goes one-on-one with Kevin Owens, the bad blood between Team Raw and Team Smackdown adding extra fuel to the fire. From the moment the bell rings, the match is a war. Cody and Owens trade stiff shots and high-impact moves, their animosity palpable as they push each other to the limit. Midway through the match, Dolph Ziggler appears at ringside, the ever-opportunistic show-off, looking to make his presence felt. Ziggler barks taunts at Cody, distracting him just enough for Owens to take control. The crowd boos as Ziggler climbs onto the apron. But before he can interfere further, CM Punk and Bryan Danielson storm down the ramp to even the odds. A brawl breaks out, the match devolving into chaos as all four men fight outside the ring. Referees and officials pour out from the back, trying to restore order, but the animosity is too strong. The segment ends with Punk, Danielson, and Cody standing tall, their message to SmackDown loud and clear. Team Raw is united, and they won't go down without a fight. Despite his injuries from SmackDown, Jake Carter limps to the ring later in the show, the crowd giving him a roaring ovation. His face is bruised, but his expression is as determined as ever. He snatches a mic, taking a moment to soak in the crowd's chants of, Jakey! Jakey! Conor McGregor, Jake begins, his voice low but crackling with intensity. You want to make a name for yourself by taking me out? You think one cheap shot is going to keep me down? Let me remind you of something, Conor. I've faced you before, and I've beaten you before. At Survivor Series, I'm going to show the world why you've gone from being a name to a punchline. The crowd cheers, but Jake's expression darkens. But let's not forget the real enemy here, Anthony Chandler. Once again, Chandler is nowhere to be found, hiding behind his hired guns. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I want you at Armageddon in Canada. Face me, one-on-one. Prove you're not the coward I know you to be. If you don't, well, the world will know exactly what kind of man Anthony Chandler really is. Jake drops the mic, his message clear, and his resolve unshaken. The main event pits CM Punk against Dolph Ziggler in a match Zara Piper booked earlier in the night to allow Team Raw to work out their frustrations before Survivor Series. The match is hard-hitting, with both men putting on a clinic and fighting as though they're on opposite sides. Midway through the match, the Titantron flickers to life, showing a live feed from the Smackdown locker room. Conor McGregor is seen trashing the room, throwing chairs and equipment as the Smackdown roster watches in stunned silence. McGregor grabs a nearby camera, staring directly into it. Jake Carter! McGregor shouts, his voice full of venom. You saw what I did last week, and I'm just getting started. Survivor Series? That's where I finished the job. As McGregor continues his tirade, Butch Gilzean steps into frame, placing a hand on McGregor's shoulder. "Save it for Survivor Series," Butch murmurs, pulling McGregor back. As Butch turns to leave, the camera subtly catches someone sitting in the corner, a shadowy figure with their back to the camera. The crowd gasps as it becomes clear. It's Anthony Chandler. He says nothing, doesn't even move, but his mere presence sends a shockwave through the arena. The feed cuts, leaving the audience buzzing. In the ring, Punk is visibly distracted, glancing toward the Titantron with a look of concern. Ziggler, ever the opportunist, takes advantage and rolls Punk up for a 3 count. Ziggler celebrates his win, but the night ends with the crowd fixated on the ominous image of Anthony Chandler, his silent presence casting a long shadow over the looming battle at Survivor Series. Week 3. Smackdown. Smackdown kicks off with Butch Gilzean already standing in the center of the ring, the lights dim to an icy blue glow that reflects the serious tone of his expression. Dressed sharply in all black, his presence radiates authority as he adjusts his tie and raises a microphone to his mouth. The crowd meets him with a wave of boos, but Butch remains unfazed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his gravelly voice echoing through the arena, "let's talk about last week. Specifically, let's talk about the so-called fallout from Conor McGregor sending Jake Carter to Dreamland with one clean shot." The crowd erupts into a mix of cheers and jeers at the mention of McGregor's ambush, which Butch acknowledges with a sly grin. He gestures for the crowd to quiet down. "Now, I've heard a lot of whining since Friday. Zara Piper, Jake Carter, and all of Team Raw can't seem to wrap their heads around what happened. Let me make it simple for you. What Conor did wasn't just necessary. It was a message. A message to Jake Carter, to Team Raw, and to every single one of you people who think that Smackdown isn't the superior brand." Butch adjusts his sleeves, pacing the ring with calculated confidence. And then there's Jake Carter, still whining and crying about Anthony Chandler, still issuing challenges, calling him out, obsessing over him like a lovesick teenager. Let me be clear. Anthony Chandler doesn't operate on anyone else's timeline. He'll address your challenge, Jake, when he's ready, in his own time and on his terms. Butch smirks, soaking in the disdain from the crowd. In the meantime, my advice to Team Raw is simple. Stop obsessing over Anthony Chandler and focus on the task at hand, surviving. Later in the night, the backstage cameras catch Kevin Owens and Blitz locked in yet another heated argument, their strained partnership bubbling dangerously close to the surface. Blitz is pacing back and forth, his fists clenched at his sides, while Owens leans casually against a row of lockers, his demeanor calm but visibly irritated. "You've got a lot of nerve," Blitz snaps, stopping in his tracks to glare at Owens. "Standing there running your mouth about Raw falling apart when we're barely holding it together. This team isn't exactly a shining example of harmony, Owens." Owens rolls his eyes and pushes off the lockers, stepping toe-to-toe with Blitz. "Spare me the lecture, Blitz. You see what's going on over there? Team Raw's a joke. Cody Rhodes is ready to snap, Punk's too busy stroking his ego, and Jake Carter? Please. He's their big tough leader, and he spent last Friday face down on our mat." Blitz steps forward, towering over Owens, his voice low and threatening. "You're real good at pointing fingers, but let's not pretend SmackDown's perfect. If it weren't for Chandler carrying your ass all those years ago, you'd still be playing prizefighter in the midcard." Owens' smirk vanishes, his jaw tightening as he steps closer, nose to nose with Blitz. "Say that again," Owens growls, his voice laced with venom. Before the situation explodes, Kenny Omega strides into the frame, his arms stretched wide as if to physically separate the two men. "All right, enough of this crap," Kenny snaps, his sharp voice filled with authority. "You two want to tear each other apart? Do it on your own time. Right now, you're representing SmackDown. You think Anthony Chandler's putting up with this drama? Grow the hell up and act like professionals." Blitz glares at Omega, but Kenny isn't finished. "You two are supposed to be the best SmackDown has to offer. So how about you stop acting like amateurs and step into the ring? Show the world what you're actually capable of. Together." Owens and Blitz exchange a tense, begrudging glance, but ultimately not in agreement, though it's clear their animosity is far from settled. Soon after, Kevin Owens and Blitz make their way to the ring to face a team of local talents. Despite their mutual disdain, Owens and Blitz demonstrate why they were chosen for Team Smackdown. Owens shreds through the competition with pinpoint accuracy, delivering his signature cannonball and a brutal pop-up powerbomb. Blitz bulldozes through the opposition with unrelenting power, showcasing an impressive combination of speed and strength. The crowd is impressed, but the chemistry between Owens and Blitz remains tenuous. After the dominant victory, Owens raises his arms in celebration, only for Blitz to turn away and roll out of the ring without so much as a glance at his partner. The tension lingers, despite the victory, leaving the audience wondering if this fragile team can truly hold together at Survivor Series. The night's final segment begins with Conor McGregor strutting to the ring alongside Butch Gilzean. Dressed in a crisp suit and exuding his trademark confidence, McGregor grabs a microphone and leans against the ropes, surveying the cheering and jeering crowd. "Well, well, well," McGregor begins, his thick Irish accent cutting through the noise. "Last week, I did what I do best. I took out the loudest mouth in the room. Jake Carter learned a lesson the hard way, and at Survivor Series, I'm going to make it permanent. McGregor prowls the ring like a lion, his grin wide and arrogant. And then there's Zara Piper, out here flapping her gums like she's relevant to any of this. Let me tell you something, Zara. You're not running Raw. You're running your mouth. But since you decided to paint me as some C-level player, I guess it's time I remind the world that I'm the biggest draw this business has ever seen. And at Survivor Series, I'm not just taking over, I'm taking out anyone who gets in my way." Before McGregor can continue, the lights dim, and the Titantron flickers to life. A cinematic video package begins playing, chronicling the storied career of Anthony Chandler. The video showcases his championship victories, iconic rivalries, and defining moments, set to dramatic music. The final shot features Chandler staring directly into the camera, his expression cold and unyielding. Suddenly, the lights come back on, and standing at the top of the ramp is Anthony Chandler himself. The crowd explodes, delivering the loudest reaction of the night as Chandler strides down the ramp, a focused determination etched on his face. Chandler doesn't rush. His movements are deliberate, his presence commanding, as he enters the ring without a word. He locks eyes with McGregor before slowly raising a microphone to his lips. "I've heard Jake Carter's challenge." Chandler begins, his voice calm but resonating with authority. "And here's my answer. I accept." The crowd erupts, and Chandler lets the excitement linger for just a moment before continuing. He turns his icy gaze to McGregor. "But Conor, let me be clear. This isn't about you. This isn't about your ego, your antics, or how many seats you think you're filling. Survivor Series isn't the Conor McGregor show. It's about the legacy of Smackdown." McGregor smirks, stepping closer to Chandler. "Legacy? You're talking to me about legacy? You may have been something once, Chandler, but I'm the reason SmackDown's in the spotlight right now. Without me, you're just another relic collecting dust." Chandler doesn't flinch, his voice steady and low. "You're on my team, Conor. And on my team, we win. But we do it my way. You follow my lead, or you can get the hell out of my ring." The crowd is on its feet as McGregor's smirk fades, replaced by a challenging glare. "You don't give me orders," McGregor growls. "I answer to no one." In a flash, McGregor shoves Chandler, and the two men are nearly nose to nose, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Before the situation can explode, Jake Carter's music hits, and the crowd erupts again. Jake storms down the ramp, his own microphone in hand. "Isn't this cute?" Jake sneers, stepping into the ring. Anthony Chandler finally decides to show his face, only for his precious little dream team to start falling apart. "You think you can outsmart me, Chandler? You think you can intimidate me? You're a joke. You've always been a joke." Jake's fiery tirade distracts him long enough for McGregor to strike, delivering a swift kick to the back of Jake's knee. As Jake drops to one knee, Chandler delivers a brutal right hand, and the crowd gasps as the two SmackDown stars launch into a merciless assault on Jake. The beatdown is vicious, culminating in a devastating left hand from McGregor and Chandler's signature finisher. Jake lies motionless in the ring as Chandler stands over him, picking up the microphone. "You were right about one thing, Jake," Chandler says coldly. I'm not playing games anymore. The show fades to black with Chandler, McGregor, and Butch Gilzean standing tall, a united front, while Jake Carter lies broken at their feet. Smackdown has delivered its message, and the road to Survivor Series has never felt more personal. Week 4, Raw. Raw begins with a somber yet intense atmosphere as Jake Carter, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and Cody Rhodes stand in the middle of the ring. The arena is silent, save for the murmur of the crowd, which senses the gravity of the moment. The four men exude a grim determination, but Jake, still visibly bruised and battered from the Smackdown assault, carries an extra fire in his eyes. The microphone in his hand shakes slightly as he raises it, his voice low and simmering with rage. "Let's talk about Friday," Jake begins, pacing the ring like a caged animal. "Let's talk about how Anthony Chandler, Conor McGregor, and Butch Gilzean decided to remind the world what cowards look like. It wasn't enough for them to beat me down. They had to do it in a 2-on-1 ambush while Butch stood there smiling like it was the best day of his life." The crowd boos, but Jake presses on, his voice growing louder. "Chandler, I've called you a lot of things these past few weeks, but now I can add one more to the list. Desperate. Because that's what you are. Desperate to prove you're still relevant. Desperate to stop me from embarrassing you at Armageddon. But mark my words, you and Conor are going to pay for every single shot you threw on SmackDown." The crowd cheers, but Jake isn't finished. He stops pacing, turning his attention to something, or rather, someone, much closer to home. "But there's another problem we need to address tonight," Jake says, his tone shifting into something colder, more deliberate. "And that problem is Dolph Ziggler." The crowd stirs with curiosity as Jake glances around at his teammates. "Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The past few weeks, Dolph, you've been a distraction. While the rest of us are laser focused on one thing, beating Team SmackDown, you've been too busy playing mind games with Cody." Jake pauses, his voice hardening. "We're days away from Survivor Series, and if we're going to go to war, we need absolute unity. If you can't give us that, then maybe you don't even belong on Team Raw." Before the crowd can fully absorb the bombshell, Dolph Ziggler's music hits. The crowd erupts with a mix of cheers and boos as Ziggler strides out onto the stage, his usual cocky smirk plastered across his face. He grabs a microphone on his way to the ring, rolling inside and standing toe-to-toe with Jake. "You're really going to stand there and question my loyalty?" Ziggler snaps, his smirk morphing into a look of defiance. "Let me remind you, Jake, I've been carrying this damn brand while you were off playing tough guy in the UFC. I've bled for Raw, I've fought for Raw, and you want to accuse me of not being committed? Give me a break." Jake doesn't flinch, his glare unrelenting. "It's not about what you've done before, Ziggler. It's about what you're doing right now. This team is supposed to be on the same page, but you're too busy taking cheap shots at Cody to see the bigger picture. So I'll ask you point blank, are you in this for Raw, or are you in this for yourself?" Ziggler glances at Cody, who's standing with his arms crossed, the tension between them palpable. "Mind games," Ziggler snaps, pointing at Cody. "That's all it is. I'm trying to keep him sharp to make sure he can handle the pressure when it matters most. Isn't that what you want, Jake? A team that's ready for anything?" Cody steps forward, his fury barely contained. "Cut the crap, Dolph," he growls. "You're not doing this for me. You're doing this because you can't stand being the guy in the background for once. You want to be the center of attention, even if it costs us the match." The two men are inches away from coming to blows, their voices rising as they exchange insults. Suddenly, Punk and Danielson step between them, placing hands on both men's chests to keep them apart. Punk raises his voice, his sharp tone cutting through the argument. "Enough," Punk barks, glaring at both men. "We don't have time for this petty bullshit. You two want to kill each other? Do it after Survivor Series. Right now, we've got a job to do." Jake steps forward, his authoritative presence commanding the room. "Dolph," Jake says, his voice calm but deadly serious, "I'm giving you one last chance. Prove to me, prove to all of us, that you're here for Raw. But if you step out of line one more time, you're off the team. Got it?" Ziggler stares at Jake for a long moment before reluctantly nodding. "Fine," he mutters. "I'm in. But don't forget, I'm the reason you even have a chance at Survivor Series." The tension remains thick as Ziggler steps back, and the segment ends with Team Raw standing together, to me, albeit shakily united. Later in the show, the cameras follow Jake Carter backstage as he storms through the halls of the arena, a man on a mission. His face is a mask of fury as he flings open doors and checks every corner, his voice echoing through the corridors. "Butch!" Jake roars, his footsteps heavy with frustration. "Where the hell are you?" He shoves his way into the production area, glaring at the startled crew. "Has anyone seen Butch Gilzian?" he demands. The nervous stagehands shake their heads, avoiding his glare. Finally, Jake corners a stagehand near catering, gripping him by the shoulder. "Where is he?" Jake growls. The stagehand stammers, He left the arena earlier. I think he's already gone." Jake exhales sharply and slams his fist against a nearby wall, the impact reverberating through the hallway. "Coward," he mutters under his breath. "You can run, Butch, but you can't hide. I'll get my hands on you. And Chandler. Soon enough." One of the night's marquee matches pits CM Punk against Kenny Omega in a dream matchup that has the entire WWE Universe buzzing. The two enter the ring to thunderous applause, and the bell rings to a deafening chant of, "This is awesome." What follows is nothing short of a wrestling clinic. Punk and Omega trade holds, counters, and strikes at a blistering pace, each man refusing to back down. Omega's explosive offense, a snapdragon suplex here, a V-trigger knee there, keeps Punk on his heels, but Punk's veteran instincts and technical mastery allow him to stay in the fight. He responds with stiff kicks, calculated submissions, and a massive Pepsi plunge from the second rope that nearly ends the match. The crowd is electric, chanting for both men as the match pushes toward its climax. But after 30 grueling minutes of action, the time limit bell rings, ending the match in a draw. The crowd gives both men a standing ovation, recognizing the incredible effort put forth. Punk and Omega exchange a respectful nod before leaving the ring, the match a testament to the high stakes of Survivor Series. Later in the night, Jake Carter is scheduled to face a local competitor. As Jake marches to the ring, the anger radiating off him is palpable. Still reeling from Smackdown and his failed attempt to find Butch, Jake is a man possessed. The bell rings, and Jake explodes out of the corner, delivering a thunderous clothesline that nearly decapitates his opponent. He immediately follows up with his signature finisher, planting the jobber into the mat. The match is over in 5 seconds, but Jake isn't satisfied. He grabs a microphone, standing over his fallen opponent as the crowd watches in stunned silence. "Anthony Chandler," Jake growls, his voice dripping with venom, "this is your future. Survivor Series is just the beginning. At Armageddon, I'm not coming to wrestle, I'm coming to end you." Jake tosses the microphone to the mat and stares directly into the camera, his piercing gaze sending chills through the arena. The show ends with Jake's intense expression burned into everyone's memory, a chilling reminder of what's to come at Survivor Series. Week 4. Smackdown. The show begins with the arena bathed in Smackdown blue lighting as Anthony Chandler, Conor McGregor, and Butch Gilzian make their way to the ring. Chandler leads the trio, his signature confidence exuding in every step, while McGregor struts behind him with his typical cocksure swagger, and Butch walks calmly, his imposing figure a silent reminder of the danger that lurks. The boos from the crowd are thunderous, but Chandler doesn't seem to care. He steps into the ring and smirks as he raises the microphone to his lips, enjoying the animosity before he speaks. "Last week," Chandler begins, his voice calm, yet commanding, "we sent a message loud and clear. Jake Carter learned the hard way that actions have consequences. He poked the bear one too many times, and I, along with Conor here, made sure he remembers his place. A week later, and all I hear is whining. From Jake, from Zara, from the entire Raw locker room. But let me get one thing straight. They're not victims." Chandler's smirk grows wider. "They're lessons. And last Friday, Jake Carter got his first." McGregor grabs the microphone from Chandler, pacing the ring like a wolf as he addresses the crowd. "Jake Carter's washed up. He's a has-been, and after Survivor Series, he'll be a never-was. You think I'm done with him? Ha, I barely got started. That boy can cry all he wants, but this Sunday, I'm going to make him cry for real when he gets knocked the fuck out again. Chandler takes the mic back, his smirk giving way to a colder, more calculating demeanor. And Jake, don't think I've forgotten about your little challenge for Armageddon. I accepted not because I need to prove anything, but because I enjoy shutting men like you up. Armageddon, in Canada, I'm not just ending your career. I'm ending the myth of Jake Carter. The crowd erupts with boos, but Chandler continues unfazed. But before we get there, we have Survivor Series. Team Smackdown versus Team Raw. And let me make this crystal clear. We aren't just going to beat Team Raw. We're going to dominate them. We're going to humiliate them. We're going to remind the world why Smackdown is the gold standard in this business. Chandler raises McGregor and Butch's hands, projecting an image of unity and strength as the three stand tall, soaking in the disdain of the audience. The message is loud and clear. Smackdown is ready for war. Later in the night, the cameras cut backstage to the Smackdown locker room, where Kevin Owens and Blitz are sitting on opposite ends of a bench, visibly tense. Owens leans back, arms crossed, looking thoroughly unimpressed, while Blitz glares at him, his frustration barely contained. You know, Owens begins casually, the only reason you're even on Team Smackdown is because Chandler needed to fill a roster spot. You're just a warm body, Blitz. Placeholder. Blitz stands abruptly, towering over Owens. You've got some nerve, Owens. You think being Chandler's lapdog makes you special? I'm twice the athlete you'll ever be, and I'll prove it at Survivor Series. Unlike you, I don't need to stab people in the back to stay relevant. Owens rises to his feet as well, the tension thick as both men glare at each other, their noses nearly touching. You'd better watch your mouth, Owens growls, because if you keep talking, you're not going to make it to Survivor Series. Before the situation can escalate further, Kenny Omega walks into the room, his face a mixture of exhaustion and frustration. Oh, for the love of... Kenny groans, stepping between them. Is this seriously what we're doing? Days before Survivor Series, and you two are acting like a couple of teenagers in high school. Owens and Blitz both glare at Kenny, but he's undeterred, his voice rising with authority. Listen carefully. This isn't about you, and it sure as hell isn't about your egos. It's about Smackdown. Our brand. Our team. So if you two can't keep it together for one night, not only will you cost us the match, hell, you'll make us the laughingstock of WWE. Kenny doesn't wait for a response. He shakes his head in disgust, muttering under his breath as he storms out of the room, leaving Owens and Blitz to exchange one last heated glare before slowly backing away from each other. Later in the night, Owens and Blitz enter the ring for a tag team match against local competitors. Despite their animosity, the duo puts on a dominant display. Owens starts the match, showing off his technical prowess and brute strength with a combination of suplexes and a crushing pop-up powerbomb. When Blitz tags in, he bulldozes through the opposition, delivering high-impact moves that leave the jobbers with no chance. The match ends in under a minute, with Blitz landing his devastating finisher for the 3 count. The crowd is impressed by their power and efficiency, but the victory is short-lived. As their arms are raised, the tension between Owens immediately reignites. Owens shoves Blitz, and Blitz shoves him back harder. Heated words are exchanged before they start throwing punches, and the two spiral into an all-out brawl right in the ring. The crowd roars as Kenny Omega sprints down the ramp, frantic to separate them. But as Kenny grabs Owens by the arm, Blitz accidentally clips Omega with a wild forearm. The unintended strike is all it takes to send Omega into a rage, and he joins the fray. The ring descends into chaos as all 3 men brawl, their fragile alliance shattering before everyone's eyes. The segment ends with referees and officials rushing to break them up, but the damage is clear. Team SmackDown's internal fractures are growing. The night's final segment begins with Anthony Chandler, Conor McGregor, and Butch Gilzean standing triumphant in the ring for one last promo ahead of Survivor Series. Chandler holds the microphone, his tone calm, yet brimming with malice. This Sunday, Chandler begins, Team Raw finds out what happens when they step into the ring with greatness. Team SmackDown isn't just a team. We're a dynasty. And Jake Carter and his band of misfits? They're just stepping stones on our way to cementing our legacy. McGregor smirks, grabbing the mic, his energy and bravado on full display. Jake Carter, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Cody Rhodes, they're all dead men walking. And when we're done with them, they'll be begging to switch brands. Before McGregor can continue, the arena lights abruptly cut out, plunging the crowd into darkness. A moment later, the lights come back on, and standing at the top of the ramp are CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. The crowd explodes as Punk raises a microphone, his voice sharp and biting. "We've heard enough," Punk snarls. "Week after week, you idiots come out here, running your mouths like you've already won. Let me clue you in. You're not facing stepping stones at Survivor Series. You're facing two of the best wrestlers this industry has ever seen. And frankly, we're tired of waiting." Punk and Bryan storm down the ramp, tossing their microphones aside as they slide into the ring. The fight is on. Punk tackles McGregor while Bryan goes after Chandler. Butch tries to intervene, but he's quickly overwhelmed as the chaos erupts. The brawl spills out of the ring, with punches and kicks flying as referees and security flood the area, trying desperately to regain control. Suddenly, Jake Carter's music hits, and the crowd erupts even louder. Jake storms onto the stage, his face a mask of pure determination. He doesn't waste time addressing the crowd. He charges straight for Chandler, who has just freed himself from Danielson's grasp near the announce table. Jake and Chandler collide in an all-out brawl that quickly spills into the crowd. The camera struggles to keep up as the two destroy everything in their path. Tables, equipment, and even barricades are toppled in their wake. They punch, kick, and slam each other against any surface they can find, the hatred between them boiling over into unrestrained violence. The fight rages on until Jake and Chandler burst through the backstage curtain, shoving and slamming each other into crates and walls. They brawl into the parking lot, where Jake tackles Chandler onto a car hood, the sound of metal crunching reverberating through the night. The show fades to black, with Jake and Chandler still locked in a brutal struggle, their blood feud setting the stage for an unpredictable and explosive Survivor Series.